Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Okay, right now it's 1 o'clock. Okay, so it's time for our class. Um, Today we're gonna talk about again IS and LM model. Okay, but this time we will try to link ISLM model into aggregate demands and aggregate supply model that we learned before in the midterm exam. Okay, for the ISLM model, you're going to have the graph like this. On the horizontal is going to be Y for the GDP. On the vertical, you're going to have a small r for the real interest rate. Okay, and you're going to have IS curve. You're going to have LM curve. Okay, IS curve derived from equilibrium in output market, which showing by using the Keynesian-Claus model. Okay, LM curve come from the equilibrium in money market. Okay, and when IS intersect with LM, we're gonna have the equilibrium point E1, and then we're gonna have the equilibrium GDP Y1 and the equilibrium of the real interest rate. Okay, R1 like this. Okay, and then we're gonna have aggregate demand and aggregate supply model that we learned before in the midterm exam. Okay, on the horizontal, it's gonna be the same with ISLM, which is gonna showing by using Y as a GDP. But on the vertical, it's gonna be different. On the vertical, it's gonna be P that stands for price level. Okay, we learned it before, okay, in midterm exam that for the aggregate supply, we're gonna have two type of them. The first one is gonna be the short run aggregate supply, SRAS, which is gonna be always the horizontal curve because we have the assumption of the sticky price. In the short run, firms, they don't want to change the price. The price is gonna be the same at P1. In the long run, we're gonna have a vertical curve, LRAS. In the long run, we assume that firm can change the price to any level they want. Okay, so in the long run, we're gonna have the flexible price, and in the long run, the GDP Y1 is gonna be equal to Y bar. Okay, Y bar means the GDP at the full employment level. So it means that we assume that in the long run, the firms they're gonna produce at the best point of the economy, the point that everyone gonna get a job. Okay, so we have the short run aggregate supply and long run aggregate supply. And the last one, we're gonna have the aggregate demand curve. Okay, just like this, AD. Okay, and the equilibrium point is gonna be the point that aggregate demand curve intersect with short run aggregate supply and long run aggregate supply, which is here, E1. Okay, so you see that for the ISLM model, the equilibrium point showing the level of GDP and the level of the real interest rate. On the other hand, the equilibrium in aggregate demand and aggregate supply model showing the level of GDP, which is we have the full employment level, everyone get a job, and it's showing the level of price, okay, the price in the economy. Okay, so today I'm gonna showing you how ISLM model is gonna connect with the aggregate demand and aggregate supply model. Okay, so the first slide here, okay, ISLM model. I'm gonna showing you that ISLM model is actually leading to the aggregate demand curve. Okay, ISLM model is leading to the aggregate demand curve. Okay, so I'm gonna drawing three graph. Okay, I'm gonna drawing three graph. Okay, one here, and one is here, and the other one is here. Okay, three graph. Okay, like this. Okay, the first one. Okay, this is gonna be represent the money market. On the horizontal is gonna be M over P, the real money supply. On the vertical is gonna be R for the real interest rate. Okay, you're gonna have the real money supply curve, which is always a vertical. This one you're gonna have M over P, and you're gonna have money demand curve MD as a function of R and Y. you're going to have the equilibrium point E1, the real interest rate R1, and the real money supply M over P. Just like this. And then we're going to link it to the right. Okay, R1, 0. This one is going to be IS and LM curve. On the horizontal is going to be Y. Okay. And then you're going to have LM curve. You're going to have IS curve like this. This is equilibrium E1. On the vertical, it's going to be R. Okay, and then they're going to put a bracket behind LM. This is the LM curve that come from the money market that have the real money supply equal to M over P. I just put the bracket M over P behind LM curve. Okay. And then after that, okay, I'm going to link it down. Okay, this is from the equilibrium point, we have Y1, link it down. This is Y1. And for the below graph is I'm going to show you how aggregate demand curve come from. So for the aggregate demand curve on the horizontal is going to be Y, on the vertical is going to be P. So actually I want to find the relationship between Y and P, between price level and Y. In this case, it's going to be total spending, okay, because it's represent aggregate demand curve. Okay, how much money they're going to spend. Okay, Y in this case is total spending. So I want to see the relationship between P and Y. So let's assume that the starting point, the P is here. Let's say P1 and Y1, I got point A. Okay, so where is P in the other graph? Okay, P is here inside real money supply. I'm gonna write it down as a P1. Okay, P is here, P1. Okay, P is inside the real money supply curve. Okay, so if P change, it's going to change the real money supply curve. It's going to change the equilibrium in money market, and it's going to change LM curve. So I'm going to write down P1. Okay, I'm going to write down P1 behind LM curve here. I'm going to put the yellow highlight here, P1. Okay, this is P1. Okay, so if P change, as you can see, if P change, it's going to change the level of real money supply, and it's going to change the equilibrium. Can you close the microphone? See you on Lee. Can you close the microphone? Okay, really noisy. Okay. So, okay, if the price level change, it's going to change the real money supply curve, and it's going to change the equilibrium in money market, and finally it's going to change the LM curve. So let's see how it's going to be. Okay, I'm going to change to the red color. If price level going down from P1 to P2 like this, if price level going down from P1 to P2, how it's going to affect the real money supply? Okay, let's assume, let me give you the example of the number. Okay, let's assume that M over P1. Okay, M is a nominal money supply. This is a number of money that we have in the economy. Let's say, for example, M is equal to 100 millions. Okay, 100 millions baht, for example, 100 millions baht. The price level P1, for example, the price of the product is like 10 baht. So it means that for the total money that we have, 100 millions baht, we can buy 10 million units of the product. Okay, we can buy 10 million units of the product. So M over P, the real money supply, is just like the purchasing power. Okay, purchasing power of the money. Okay, so then if P become lower, okay, if P become lower, for example, M over P2, we still have the same nominal money supply. Okay, we still have the same nominal money supply. For the number of money in the economy is still the same, equal to 100 million baht. However, the price of the product become cheaper. Okay, the price of the product becomes cheaper from 10 baht. It's cheaper to 5. What does it mean? Even though in the economy we still have the same number of the money, but right now the price becomes cheaper. So it means that we can buy more. From 10 million units of the product, now we can buy 20 million units of the product. Okay, yes, you can see that the price going down, the real money supply become increasing. Okay, when the price going down, the real money supply become increasing. So the curve of the real money supply gonna shift to the right. This is M over P2. Okay, M over P2. The equilibrium point change from E1 to E2, and finally the real interest rate dropped down from R1 to R2. Link it to the right, okay? The equilibrium point in money market chain and its effect directly on LM curve. Okay, this MOP2 LM curve gonna shift to the right. Equilibrium point chain from E1 to E2, and finally GDP increasing from Y1 to Y2, as you can see. Okay, this is because of price level going down from P1 to P2, price level going down from P1 to P2. Okay, it's make LM curve shift to the right. Link it down. Okay, LM curve shift to the right, GDP increasing from Y1 to Y2. In this case, Y is like total spending. Okay, so what this mean here is when price going down from P1 to P2, people spend more from point A to point B. People spend more from Y1 to Y2. So this is the law of demands. Okay, then I just drawing the curve to connect point A and point B together. I got aggregate demand curve, which is the same as the normal demand curve. When everything becomes cheaper, you're gonna buy more, you're gonna spend more, right? This is the law of demand. When everything becomes cheaper, you're gonna spend more, buy more. On the opposite side, when everything becomes more expensive, you're gonna buy less. Okay, so for the aggregate demand curve, price level and total spending Y always have a negative relationship. Okay, always have a negative relationship. That's it. This is how aggregate demand curve come from. Okay, very easy. Okay, this is how the aggregate demand curve come from. Okay, done. Okay, any question here? Okay, so far so good. Okay, and then next one we're gonna talk about, okay, how aggregate demand curve gonna shift. Okay, how aggregate demand curve gonna shift. The first thing that can shift the aggregate demand curve is gonna be the central bank, CB. Okay, central bank can use what we call a monetary policy. Okay, because central bank can control M. So in this case, I'm gonna showing you that if central bank increasing M, increasing nominal money supply, how it's gonna affect aggregate demand curve. Okay, so drawing three graph again. 1, 2, okay, and 3. Okay, the upper graph on the left is gonna be money market. We have R M over P. This is M. Let's say M1 over P Okay, I coming back. Okay, wait a minute. I need to connect to my iPad. The internet at the university is bad. Okay, so I think everything is good now. Okay, so okay, let's go back to our lecture again. Okay, so this one I'm gonna showing you how to shift the aggregate demand curve. Okay, the aggregate demand curve can be shifted by the central bank. The central bank can using monetary policy. So it means that when central bank changing M, okay, changing the number of the nominal money supply, it can shift the aggregate demand curve. So I'm gonna starting with drawing three graph. Okay, the upper graph on the left, this is gonna be represent the money market. I have the real money supply curve M1 over P1. Okay, so I'm gonna write down here M1 over P1. I have money demand curve MD as a function of R and Y. And then I have equilibrium point in money market, which is E1. I have the real interest at R1. I link it to the right, R1, Y, and R. Okay, I have IS curve. I have LM curve here. LM curve, this one come from when I have the real money supply equal to M1 over P1. Link it down. This is Y1. This is Y1, Y, O, and P. Okay, I assume that P1 is here. I have point A on aggregate demand curve. Okay, I have point A on the aggregate demand curve. But this time, okay, the graph maybe look the same as the previous one, but this time we're gonna focus on M, okay, M1, M1, and M1. If the central bank using monetary policy, for example, if they're increasing M, inject more money into the economy, what does it mean? When M increasing, okay, the real money supply curve will shift to the right. But this one, I have to say that this one, we fix the level of P. This is a difference, okay? The previous slide, we changed P, but this time we fix the value of P, okay? P is the same. We fix the value of P is the same. But in this case, we focus on the changing of M by the central bank, okay? If central bank increasing M, P is the same. The real money supply shift to the right from M1 to M2. P is the same. P is P1. As you can see, P is still the same, P1, okay? Okay, but M increasing from M1 to M2, P is the same, P1. As you can see, the equilibrium point in the money market change from E1 to E2. The real interest rate drop down from R1 to R2, R2, okay? And it affects LM curve to shift to the right. This is LM curve when you have the real money supply equal to M2 over P1. As you can see, P1 is the same, okay? The difference between this graph and the previous graph is the previous graph is a changing of P, but in this graph is a changing of M, okay? So the equilibrium point in ISLM curve changing from E1 to E2, and finally GDP increasing from Y1 to Y2. Okay, and then we're gonna link it down. Y2, link it down to Y2 over here. P is the same. P is the same. So it means that it's like moving from point A to point B. It's like moving the whole curve of aggregate demands to the right. You got it? Okay, because we fixed the level of P. Okay, if you fix the level of P, okay, you're focusing on M as the monetary policy of the central bank, you're gonna have the case of the shift of aggregate demand curve. Okay, and this one you can see that if the central bank increasing M, it's gonna shift the real money supply curve to the right. It's gonna shift the LM curve to the right, and eventually it's gonna shift the aggregate demand curve to the right. Okay. So then we can make the conclusion over here that central bank can use monetary policy. Okay. If central bank increasing M, then LM curve will shift to the right, and aggregate demand curve also shift to the right. On the opposite way, you may try to do by yourself at home. Okay, if the central bank lower M, okay, reducing the number of nominal, reducing the nominal money supply, or reducing the number of money in the economy. Okay, LM curve will shift to the left, and aggregate demand curve also shift to the left. This is what you learn, okay, from here. Okay, so far so good. Okay. Next one. Okay, we still talking about how aggregate demand curve can be shift. Okay, how aggregate demand curve can be shift. But this time we're gonna talk about the government. Okay, if the government using fiscal policy, okay, it can shift the aggregate demand curve. So in this case, I'm gonna drawing 3 graphs. Okay, here, one on top, one on the middle, and one for the below. Okay, not so good. Let me drawing again. I have one on top, one in the middle, and one below. Okay, on the top I have the output market. Output market represented by Keynesian cross model. On the horizontal is Y, on the vertical is TE, total expenditure. Every point on the 45-degree curve is gonna be the total expenditure always equal to the GDP, Y. Okay, and then we have the total expenditure curve, TE equal to C plus I plus G, let's say G1. This is equilibrium point 1. I have Y1, link it down. This is IS and LM model. On the horizontal, I have Y. On the vertical, I have R. And then I have LM curve. I have IS curve. Okay, LM curve come from when I have the real money demand M over P, let's say. Okay, and then I have equilibrium point E1, R1. Okay, just like that. Okay, and then I link it down again. Y1, this is Y, O, and P. This is point A on aggregate demand curve, and this is P1. Okay, P1. So in this case, I'm gonna focus on the fiscal policy. Okay, the government can control G. Okay, G. For example, if the government increasing G, spend more, how is gonna affect aggregate demand curve? When the government increasing G, G is here inside total expenditure curve. When the government spend more, TE shift up like this. This is TE equal to C plus I plus G2. Let's say the G2 is greater than G1. Okay. And then equilibrium point moving up to the right from E1 to E2. GDP increasing from Y1 to Y2. And then as you can see over here, when the equilibrium point in output market change, is going to affect IS curve. So in this case, IS curve shift to the right from E1 to E2. The real interest rate going up from R1 to R2. Okay, link it down. Okay, Y2, Y2. In this case, P is the same, right? P is the same because this one we're focusing on the changing of G only. Okay, we're focusing on the changing of G only. The P is the same, price level is the same. So when G increasing, IS curve shift to the right. Okay, GDP increasing from Y1 to Y2. So that it's like the moving from point A to point B. It's like aggregate demand curve shift to the right for the whole curve. Okay, the aggregate demand curve shift to the right for the whole curve. So in this one, we can say that when the government using fiscal policy, when the government increasing their spending, total expenditure curve shift up, IS curve shift to the right, and finally, aggregate demand curve, aggregate for the whole country increasing or shift to the right. Okay, very simple, very simple. So we're gonna have the conclusion here. For the government can use fiscal policy. Okay, if the government increasing G, okay, IS curve will shift to the right, and aggregate demand curve also shift to the right. Okay, on the opposite way, okay, you may try to draw the graph by yourself at home. On the opposite way, if G reducing, okay, the government reducing government spending, IS curve will shift to the left. Okay, and finally, aggregate demand curve also shift to the left. Simple like that, very easy. Okay, so that's it. That's it. This is how the government fiscal policy affects aggregate demand curve. Okay. Next one, we're still talking about the shift of aggregate demand curve. Okay, but this time, okay, if there are something change in total expenditure, okay, we talk about G, but this time we're gonna talk about what we have inside the total expenditure. In this case, we're gonna have household sector. I'm gonna write down as double H. Double H is like a household sector. When household sector spending the money, we call consumption or C. And then we have the business sector. When business sector spending, we call I as investment. Okay. So in this case, I'm gonna show you that for some reason, for some external factor, if the household consume more, okay, or if the business sector invest more, this is not because of the real interest rate, okay? This is because of the external factor, okay? This is not because of the real interest rate. This is not because of price. This is from the external factor. If household consume more, or if business sector invest more, how it's gonna affect the aggregate demand curve. Okay, so to showing you here, I need to drawing three graph again. Okay, drawing three graph like this. Okay, on top, this is a 45-degree curve. I have TE, I have Y. On every point on the 45-degree curve, TE equal to Y. I have TE equal to C1 plus I1 plus G. Okay, this time I focusing on C and I, sorry, consumption and investment. I have the equilibrium point E1, Y1, link it down, Y1, O, Y, and R. Okay, I have LM curve. I have IS curve. Okay, I have equilibrium point 1. I have R1, link it down. This is P, O, and Y. I have Y1. I assume that P1 is here. Okay, I assume that P1 is here. Then I'm gonna have aggregate demand curve here. I have point A. Point A. So from here, okay, if the household sector consume more, if the business sector invest more, okay, total expenditure curve will shift up like this. Okay, total expenditure curve will shift up. This is TE equal to C2 plus I2 plus G. Note here that C2 is greater than C1. Okay, and I2 is greater than I1. Okay, Equilibrium point in output market change from E1 to E2, GDP increasing from Y1 to Y2, and it's gonna shift the IS curve to the right. Equilibrium point change from E1 to E2, real interest rate going up, right? And then you link it down because this one, P is the same, fixed. GDP already increasing from Y1 to Y2, so it's like the moving from point A to point B, the whole aggregate demand curve shift to the right. So far so good. The whole aggregate demand curve shift to the right. This is because of household sectors consume more, business sector invest more. So far so good. Okay. So then we can make the conclusion. Okay, we can make the conclusion that total expenditure, okay, total expenditure for household that they have consumption, C, and business sector that they have I, okay. If household sector consume more, business sector invest more, IS curve gonna shift to the right. And aggregate demand curve also shift to the right. On the opposite way, you may try to drawing the graph by yourself at home. If the household sector consume less, if the business sector invest less, IS curve will shift to the left. And aggregate demand curve also shift to the left. Okay, this is for the conclusion. So for here, you can see that IS and LM curve, okay, IS and LM model have the effect directly on aggregate demand curve. So finally, we're gonna have a complete model. Finally, we're gonna have the complete model. So I can connect IS and LM model together with aggregate demand and aggregate supply model by drawing two graphs, one on top and one on the bottom. Okay, like this. On top, this one is gonna be IS and LM curve. Okay, like this, IS and LM curve. This is E1. We have Y, O, and R. This is Y. This is R. Okay. Let's say R1 and Y1. We have to write down one on top and one below because they have the same horizontal names, Y and Y. Okay. They have Y and Y. Okay, same horizontal names. Okay, on the vertical, it's going to be different. For the ISLM on the vertical, it's going to be R. For aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve on the vertical, it's going to be P. This is different. Okay. So then Y1, link it down. This is Y1. For the aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve, Y1 going to be always equal to Y bar, full employment level. And this one is long run aggregate supply curve. And then we're going to have short run aggregate supply curve. Long run aggregate supply curve and short run aggregate supply curve come from the assumption of firms. Okay, don't be forget that we assume that firms, they're going to have the sticky price in the short run. That's why short run aggregate supply curve always have the horizontal curve. Okay, always have a horizontal line. Okay, because in the short run, they're going to fix the price at P1. For the long run, we assume that firms, they have the flexible price. They can set the price to any level they want. And we assume that in the long run, firms, they're going to produce at the full employment level. So we assume that in the long run, the economy, our country, we're going to produce at full employment level. Everyone's going to get a job. Okay. And then we have the aggregate demand curve, which I showed you before, that aggregate demand curve can derive from IS and LM model. Here, so I have equilibrium point here, E1. Okay, it's linked together. So I can simply draw long run aggregate supply in IS and LM model because Y1 should be equal to Y bar, same as below. So I can do like this. Okay, so as you can see, if I write out like this, okay, ISLM model and aggregate demand, aggregate supply curve, they are connected together. They are connected together. Okay, we have Y1 equal to Y bar, Y1 equal to Y bar, same. Okay, the same. And for the ISLM, they're gonna showing real interest rate, aggregate demand curve, aggregate supply, gonna showing price level. Okay, this is a different. Okay, so this is what we call the complete model. Okay, and next time we're gonna playing with the complete model together. Okay, so yeah, this is all for today. That is all for today. That's it. Okay, should be good. Okay, so today we're gonna stop here. However, I'm gonna give you the extra class on this Sunday. Okay, this Sunday from 11 to 11:40. If you are free, okay, this Sunday is like September 11, right? Okay, yeah, September 11. Okay, I'm gonna have the extra class this time. If you are free, you can join. If you are busy, you can watch the video clips later. Okay, you can watch the video clips later. So we're gonna have the makeup class on Sunday. Okay, so far so good. Yeah, that's fine. If you stay in Denmark, you can watch the video clip later. We don't have attendance points anyway. Okay, it's okay. Okay, it's okay. You can watch the video clip later. You have, if you have the question, you can ask me in the Facebook. Okay, or when you come back to Chiang Mai, you can meet me at my office anytime. You are welcome. So far so good. Okay. Okay, so that's it for today. Okay, see you again next time. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.